Hi everyone, this is a follow-up video that I've been asked to do with regards to cabling for splitting output when using iDevices. For example, when using Djay for iPad by Algoriddim. Now, what I've got here is it's a bit of a classroom, I'm afraid. I've got the connections here and I've got a diagram to show it. And as I connect the items together, I'll show you the various connections and the signal paths using the diagram. So on the desk, it's actually a flight case for one of my mixing units. I've got various cables, I've got various connectors, I've got a book with a diagram, and as always, a cup of tea, mostly finished. I'm quite cold actually. Right, starting off, let's grab an iDevice. I use my iPhone for this just because it's a bit smaller, and what we have is we have a 3.5mm connector on the top. Now on the iDevices it's actually a 4-pin connector. It has a left and right signal output for audio and a ground for the audio, and it also has a signal input path for headphone volumes and also for line ins. We're only going to be concentrating on the output, so the two left and right, the left and the right signal outputs and the ground output for audio. Now, as you may or may not be aware, the split output method that's employed with apps for iDevices is done for one reason, and the reason is that there aren't two sound cards within iDevices. I'm not sure whether that's a hardware technical limitation. I don't know if there are actually two sound devices within the units or whether there's only one, or whether Apple just don't allow the app developers access to them. As you know, you can get audio from your multi-connector or the 3.5, but not both at the same time. As I say, I think that's definitely in Apple's court. Anyway, let's concentrate on the audio connections. Right, first thing we're going to do is we're going to plug in a 3.5mm stereo cable. Okay, I'm going to use a terminology throughout this. Stereo means a cable that will transfer both left and right channels down one cable. For that, I'm going to use one of these. Now this is a 3.5mm to 3.5mm, and it's male on both ends. It just happens to be one I've got lying around. You can buy male and then have female on the other end. So I'm going to plug that into my iDevice, which leaves me now with a 3.5mm male connection on the other end. I've still got a stereo signal. In other words, if I was using Djay for iPad, if I plugged that into something that would produce the sound, I would get both decks playing all the time, unless I use the crossfader. Now, because of a device a little bit further down the line, I've got to use one of these. Now this is a 3.5mm stereo female connector to 3.5mm stereo female connector. All it's doing is gender changing. It's changing it from a male to a female. Plugging that in, looks like that. Quick look at the diagram. And what we've got is, first of all, we've got the device output here, so we've got ground left and right. We've got 3.5mm to 3.5mm cable, which is a male-male, so we've got ground left and right connections. And we're up to this point here where we've got a 3.5mm to 3.5mm female to female adapter. So we've got ground left and right channels within there. So again, we're still at the point where we haven't split anything yet. All we've done is just moved the connection point further down the signal path. Now, this is the tricky one. It's this little puppy. Now this is a 3.5mm stereo to RCA or Fano mono output. What it's doing is it's splitting the signal path from, so it's breaking these. If you look at the end of that connector, I don't know if you'll be able to see that, you have three connections on there. You have a tip, a collar, and I think it's tip, ring and collar. I think that's how they describe them. Now you'll have to excuse my ignorance of this, but I believe that the collar is the ground, the ring is one of the channels, possibly the right channel, and the tip is one of the other channels. It may not be in that order, so please forgive me. But what it's going to do is it's going to take each of those. So if we'll just say for the sake of this that this collar is the ground signal, or the ground. It's going to divide that connector into these two outer rings, the outer collars of the Fano connector. The ring and the pin, it's then going to divide those internally to the center connections within the Fano. That's going to create two mono channels from our stereo input. Now when you go into a store and ask for a splitter, make sure that you ask for a stereo to mono splitter. You want to be able to break the left and the right channels out of each other. If you just ask for a splitter, then 9 times out of 10 what they will give you is something that looks similar to this, possibly without phono connections, but all that's going to do is break the stereo signal into two stereo signals. For example, if you were sitting there with your beloved and you wish to both listen to the audio output of your iPhone or iPad, you could buy a stereo splitter and plug this end into your iDevice and this end with the appropriate connections, plug two headphone sets in, and you both hear the stereo output, because it's just going to split it into two stereo outputs. But so very important, 3.5mm, or doesn't have to be 3.5, but it's the most common, 3.5mm stereo to mono output. This happens to be a phono style. Right, we're now going to plug that into the female to female adapter that we had. As you can see, this is why I need to use the female to female. So now at the end of this cabling, got our iDevice at one end, we've got connections at the other. What we now ended up with is those two connectors are now left and right mono channels. So that is the left hand channel, that's the right hand channel, or the other way around. Okay. Now, because I want to plug this device into a mixer, the mixer has 4 connections, 2 for the left hand channel of the mixer and 2 for the right hand channel of the mixer. It doesn't matter that I don't use both connections, but just for the the sake of completeness I do. Now to accomplish that I need to break these individual channel connections, so left and right channel connections, or left and right looking on the video. I need to break those into 2 more phono connections. Now I don't want to change anything, I just want to make duplicates. So I want to create 2 versions of that and 2 versions of that. For that I'm going to use one of these. Now it does look similar to this, but all this does is it has a single input and a twin output. Whatever is pushed out onto this output is pushed out onto that output. They are identical, they're a duplicate of each other. So this collar attaches to these 2 collars, and the center pin attaches to the center connection on this unit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug one into one output of our stereo to mono splitter. I'm going to plug the other one into the other side. Okay. Quick refer back to the drawing. We're down here now, so we've got the 3.5mm stereo twin phono mono connection, so that's that unit there that we spoke at length about. And now we've got a ground, a left and a right and a ground. Okay, I'll pull those 2 off just for the sake of clarity. So that's where we're up to there. Now this is going to fit into the pathway here. And as you see, what it does is we've got a signal path which is duplicated, so we've got 2 signal paths, and the ground is duplicated, so we've got 2 ground paths. And exactly the same in that unit there. Now obviously we have a problem, those are female and the connections on our mixer are also female. So what we need to do is we need to use some cabling, or a bit more cabling. The cabling I'm going to use is standard RCA Fano cabling, and it's merely a case of plugging the leads into the connectors. Now normally the red and white denote left and right, but because we're outputting mono, it doesn't matter if you mix them around, so you could have red one way and white the other way. Just because I'm pedantic, I tend to put them the same way. So we've now got it connected like so. And on the other end of those cables we've got 4 phono connectors. What we actually have is those 2 cables are going to supply exactly the same signal to the mixer on the channel that they're on, which is the left hand channel, and those 2 are going to supply exactly the same signal for the right hand channel. So no matter which one of those, they're both carrying the same right hand channel signal and they're both carrying the same left hand channel signal. So if we quickly look on our diagram, okay, what we've got is we've got these units here. It's all getting a bit complicated now. Let's get rid of that. Okay, so what we've got is we've got that unit there, which is splitting the single phono into two independent phonos. Okay, and this is the phono cable, which then goes off and connects into our mixer thus. Okay, that's about it really. Not as interesting as normal, but never mind. So I hope that's of some help to you. I'll just move this around in front of the camera, just so that you can sit and look at that for a few moments. Might not make any sense to you, but hopefully it will. One of the best ways of actually sitting down and doing this is actually to draw it out on a piece of paper what you're trying to accomplish. Once you've got what you want to accomplish in mind, then you'll find that when you go to the stores and ask for these things, it becomes a lot easier to talk about it. Certainly if you take the piece of paper with you, you can then explain using diagrams. People tend to respond to pictures and diagrams better than words. Right, that's it. I'm going to finish my cup of tea now. See you soon. Bye.